We shepherds sing this song still today. We wonder over the way God chose to come into the world to establish justice, to redeem God's good creation, to proclaim good news for all people. We wonder why God chose to be born a vulnerable human infant, the son of Mary, the child of an unwed young woman, promised to a righteous man. We wonder how God's choice of announcing the birth to ordinary people, shepherds in the field, holds meaning for those who hear the story of Jesus today. We wonder because our role, my role as a shepherd, being the first to know that the Messiah had been born, visited by messengers of God, heavenly beings, defies all expectations. Defies all expectations. That's the wonder of Luke's story. All that God does in Jesus defies our expectations, goes against the grain of accepted social order, and turns the world upside down. Take us, for example, the shepherds watching our flocks by night, the lowliest rung on the ladder of success. Rock bottom. No one aspired to be a shepherd. It was solitary work out on the hillsides with the sheep, 24 hours, 7 days a week. We were shaggy, like sheep. We smelled like sheep. We were not even allowed into the temple to practice our faith. No one wanted us around. We weren't all that social anyway. We were poor. Really poor. Very poor. Movies and pageants clean us up a little too much. I read somewhere that in Hollywood there is an exclusive school that is attended by children of movie stars and producers and directors. And they were asked to write a composition on the subject of poverty. And one little girl started her literary piece. Once there was a poor little girl. Her father was poor, her mother was poor, her governess was poor, her chauffeur was poor, her butler was poor. In fact, everybody in the house was very, very poor. We were poor, ordinary, and without the power necessary to change our lives. Oh, sure, some of us had made mistakes along the way. Some may have been skilled laborers had it not been for their taste for wine. Some may have been servants of the temple had it not been for their bungling of relationships. Others may have been merchants or traders had it not been for their insatiable greed and gambling losses. Still others may have been the owners of the flocks had they not been lured falsely like prey into losing deals on their inherited land. And some were just throwaways because they were different in some way. No one chose to be a shepherd. Most were like migrant or immigrant workers trying to pay off massive, impossible debts to their debtors or sponsors and to the community. And so I wondered, for a long time, why did God choose to announce the birth of God's Son, the Savior of the world, to shepherds? Until I finally heard Mary's song. You call it the Magnificat. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. He has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. The first shepherds, you see, had not heard this song. They were just overwhelmed by the presence of God's messengers proclaiming good news for all people and peace on earth for all people. Shepherds, they longed for good news, the promised Savior, the Messiah, God's chosen King to break the bonds of injustice and let the prisoners free, to proclaim God's favor for the poor, to give sight to the blind. But when you are of the shepherd lot, when you are the outcast, the scorned, the shamed, the poor, it's hard to believe any good news. And good news is truly very hard to come by at the bottom of the heap. It's hard to trust anyone there, even God's representatives in the world, the temple then and the church today. Temple authorities blamed us and banned us from being in the presence of God, blamed us for everything that went wrong in the community. When the Roman armies rolled through town and decided to rape and murder a few folks as a deterrent and threat for everyone else, we got blamed. When droughts decimated the harvest and famine hit the land, we were the ones to blame. When sickness claimed the lives of children, it was somehow the shepherds who caused it, along with the lepers and the mentally ill, of course. And I hear the same rings true today. Too often the lowliest are blamed and not lifted up. The hungry are scorned for being lazy or irresponsible and not filled with good things. Friends, I've met the shepherds of this time. The homeless poor, the addicts, the financially preyed upon, the abused and the used, the trafficked and enslaved. Right here in this community. Some still sleep in fields, not watching sheep, but trying to survive the elements. Some are still banned from being in the presence of God, from the church, turned away as if they were too lost to be found. When you, Central Christian Church, open your doors to the homeless in this community in a couple of weeks, providing shelter from the coldest days of the year, those who knock on your door will find a warm meal, a hot shower, the generosity of soap and clean clothing, warm socks, and a willing spirit of compassion, companionship, and love. When they knock on these doors, they will hear Mary's song, be lifted up and filled with good things, receiving the message of the angels of good news for all, for all people. You see, that's what the Nativity story is really all about. That's why we gather to sing the beautiful hymns of the season, and that's why we wait with anticipation and expectation for Christ to come into the world anew. We find hope in the wonder and expectation of God's amazing gift of good news for all people, of peace, of love, and of joy. When Mary birthed Jesus in a cow's stall, with wise men and farmers and shepherds and all, and high from God's heaven a star's light did fall, the promise of the ages it then did recall. So when Mary sings, "He has helped his servant Israel," in remembrance of his mercy according to the promise he made to our ancestors, to Abraham and to his descendants forever. Ordinary shepherds were ready to trust in God's promise and to listen for the world-transforming, the life-changing good news of Jesus, the Savior. Are you?